Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
Hi, this is Fire Chief Gord Schreiner from Comox Fire Department, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and you're listening to Dr. Rich Gasaway on SA Matters Radio. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming. Time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of Situational Awareness Matters Radio Show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. Before we get connected into this week's guest, I want to give you an update on the changes here at SA Matters. Apparently, launching a new website is a whole lot more complicated than I realized. Thank you for your patience. The new site is going to have some cool features, but cool features take a while to develop, I'm learning. For those who are members of the SA Matters community, which means you've clicked on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says SA Matters Membership and signed up, you've watched as I've painstakingly developed that website over the last 3 years. It's a pretty basic site because I wanted to focus on more of my attention on delivering good content than on aesthetics. But I also know that cool stuff keeps people coming back. One of the cool things I've added is that anyone who signs up for membership now gets a free report titled 25 Best Practices for Improving Situational Awareness. And that's up right now on the existing website. So if you're not a member, go over to the website now and sign up. It's free. For anyone who is a member, be watching your inbox. I should have a drum roll playing or something. In celebration of the 3-year anniversary of SA Matters, I'm going to be sending out some uber awesome free videos that will be, for all intents and purposes, mini courses that will focus on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making. You may want to add support at richgasaway.com, saying that again, support at richgasaway.com, to your safe sender list. Otherwise, the emails with the video links might go to your spam, and I promise you these are videos you're going to want to watch and share with others. Oh, did I mention that they'll be free? I want to make sure that every first responder has a baseline understanding about what situational awareness is and why it's catastrophically important to understand how situational awareness becomes the foundation for your good decision making. So watch your inbox, they'll be coming shortly. I want to share some feedback that I received from one of the readers from the SA Matters website, and I'm going to withhold the person's name just to protect their confidentiality. And here's what they had to say in an email to me. I took the time to read and reread your article about the fire service culture and how it affects situational awareness. I can tell you that I came from a broken house with poor organizational culture. The indoctrination was into a culture of mediocrity. Outside of myself and an officer who had over 20 years' experience prior to joining my local department, everyone had comfortably conformed to the expectations of simply doing as one is told. No more, no less. The officer knew from the start that I was different, and I wasn't like the rest. I wanted to be the very best first responder I could possibly be, and as I cut my teeth into the fire and EMS world, treating patients not only used my newly gained skills of pre-hospital medicine and competency in my skill set, but I also had compassionate care and a supreme calm that put in ease even when they were at their worst. While I know that fitting in as a functioning member of a fire department requires effort on the part of the individual to ensure they're reaching the bar that's been set by the organization. When that person is already exceeding expectations, they are considered to not be a team player by virtue of their non-conformity to the behaviors of the complacent, the mediocre, and the lazy. I don't discount things can be learned on the job. It's absolutely true that lessons are learned on the fire ground and at emergency scenes. Your article, however, was dead center in the bullseye about the ways poor organizational culture breaks down the situational awareness of a responder. I found myself getting task fixated, which was evident when assessed on my performance by the chief officers. However, it was confusing to be told that as an EMS officer, that when I tried to multitask, I should focus on patient care using my skills as an EMT and leave the documenting to someone with a lower level of training, usually a first responder. Conflicting opinions aside, I believe that this was where regular training should have helped to fill in the gaps by broadening my knowledge base and sharpening the skills that I had learned in EMT school. Instead, I often found myself muddling through, struggling at times, and processing what I was told to do versus what I knew, according to my EMT training, was the right thing to do. I butted heads with my EMS officer on a number of occasions because he was unaware that he was doing the wrong thing for the patient, yet at the same time he made it difficult for me to do the right thing in treating the patient. I'm sharing my experience I had in a culture of mediocrity, not to bash the department, but to simply say that this was the sad truth I encountered. I'm still proud of the name and the history of my local department. I grew up in a firehouse, and there are times when I still long for the feeling of home that I used to know. I ended up leaving disillusioned, since I experienced the low standard of personal and departmental pride, integrity, and dedication among the members. I isolated myself because I couldn't understand why anyone doing such a dangerous job as firefighting or providing EMS care could accept mediocrity. Since resigning from the department, I've turned on to learning from leaders like yourself. I have come to realize from the reading of your articles that the necessary situational awareness I should have had was lost in this dysfunctional culture. I want to keep reading and learning more about situational awareness so that I can keep myself calm and my crew safe. Keep doing what you're doing to help firefighters stay safe and realize that situational awareness matters. With sincerity and best wishes. Thanks to the reader for sharing that story and experience, and I'm very sorry that you've had that happen to you and became disillusioned as a firefighter. I'm hoping that you'll be able to find a department that can provide that level of excellence that you're so aspiring to provide. For the listeners, if you're interested in reading the article that is being referenced in this feedback, it was one that I wrote in September of 2013 called Culture and Situational Awareness, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode. But you can go over to samatters.com and go to the search box and put culture in the search box, and you'll find that article. Or you can go to the categories box and click on culture, and you'll see that there are about 54 articles written there that reference something related to fire service culture. So as you can see, it's a big deal and a big contributor to problems with situational awareness and decision making and firefighter safety. Okay, let's get into our feature segment. On July 5th, 2013, the Spokane Fire Department responded to a report of a commercial building fire at the Mayfair Professional Building, located at 5901 North Mayfair in Spokane. Within 2 minutes of the alarm, the first arriving company found light smoke coming from the area of the HVAC units on the side of the building. The structure was Type 5 construction, 2-story with a basement. The first arriving crews attempted to knock down the fire with an exterior attack, but were not successful. Subsequently, companies went to the basement, expecting to find fire in the basement. The conditions were warm, but had very little smoke. The basement design was complex, and the BC had lines charged and started searching for victims and for the fire. The crews were cutting holes in the walls and the ceilings looking for the source of the fire. My podcast interviewee, Assistant Chief Brian Schaeffer, arrived and noticed the conditions were getting worse, and an order was given to cut some access holes from the exterior to the interior to the basement area. The BC in the basement reported that the conditions were relatively clear. From the outside, though, they could see heavy smoke under pressure, but there was nothing on the inside. Assistant Chief Schaeffer then became Division 1 on the first floor, and he reported a light smoke on the first floor. And the companies were doing primary and secondary search on the first floor, looking for extension from the fire that was allegedly thought to be in the basement. Soon the conditions started to change quickly, and Division 1 reported that they had heavy smoke that was banking down to the floor, and they reported that to the basement division. It was just a matter of just a breath or two, as it was described, and the first floor crews were pushed down to their knees. The basement reported no smoke and still cold conditions, but the exterior conditions changed dramatically. The crew on the first floor was in complete darkness as they exited. However, there were still crews in the basement, and conditions continued to change rapidly, and evacuation tones had to be ordered, and the Division 1 crew had to go to the basement and locate and assist those members out of the basement. Some takeaways you're going to get from this interview include how rapidly changing fire conditions can unexpectedly overrun crews. You'll hear what you can learn when fire does not behave as expected, meaning like the puzzle pieces aren't quite fitting together and you kind of have this feeling that something's wrong, but you don't really know what. You'll hear how you can become normalized to your environment and may not see the conditions are changing and the level of severity is changing. Kind of like the frog that gets put into the cold pan of water and then heats up, gets boiled in the water, how this can happen to us. You'll learn how volumes of radio traffic on a single tactical channel can impact scene safety if at-risk crews can't communicate via radio. Chief Schaeffer will talk about time distortion and how it impacted perception of the speed that the incident was changing, and how the Spokane Fire Department is using the skills of a psychologist to help develop emotional intelligence, build incident scene situational awareness, and recover from traumatic incidents. So let's get stuck in with our interview with Spokane Fire Department Assistant Chief Brian Schaeffer. Oh, I forgot one thing. If you go to the show notes, there is a PowerPoint presentation that Brian's going to reference throughout the interview. So he'll say go to a certain slide number. Don't go with the number that's on the slide. Go with what's the Rolodex is showing in the PDF. And then also there is some raw video of a helmet cam of the first arriving company to the scene. So you want to check that out. Just go to the show notes, samatters.com/29.
So we were dispatched on July 5th in 2013 to what was reported to be smoke coming from the west side of a commercial building. The building itself is on North Mayfair. It's in predominantly a commercial area. Most of the buildings in the area are all healthcare related and supportive to Holy Family Hospital, which is essentially across the street. It was a normal day for us, the day before or the day after 4th of July. So from a system perspective, we were extremely busy. We live in an urban interface area. It's an urban fire department. We normally send to a commercial building about 6 companies, 3 or 4 engines, 2 ladders, and rescue, as well as 2 battalion chiefs. And they went en route initially based on the information of light smoke. The incident wasn't upgraded until the first unit arrived and said they did have a working fire. So minutes after the arrival of the 1st Battalion Chief, it was upgraded to a confirmed working fire.
Okay, hold on, Brian. How big?
Sure.
What's the dimensions and the construction style for the building?
Yeah, it's a good question. It was about 70 by 50, Type 5 wood frame, non-sprinklered building, which is common in that area, but not so common to have such a unique building that isn't protected in our jurisdiction, especially one that was being used as predominantly a medical type of occupancy. There was dentist offices, PT, several different type of offices that saw patients.
Single
Lots
story?
Of flammable. Two-story.
Two-story.
With what we believed was a full basement.
Okay. All right. Now we got it. And you said the first alarm responds. How many total people is that on the alarm estimated on the alarm?
About 23.
Okay.
Is first alarm commercial assignment for us.
Okay.
And the companies, because of where this was in the North Battalion, there are several companies very close, all within 5 minutes or so on arrival of each other. So just probably like a lot of the listeners are familiar with, it's a bread and butter type of commercial building fire. In the heat of the day, it came in around 1558, closer to 1600 by the time that everybody got there. So it was pretty hot, and the crews had already had a couple fires and lots of EMS calls that day. So not to say everybody was tired, but everybody was focused and wanting to get this knocked out, I think, as soon as we could. When the incident did get upgraded to a working incident, that's when the command staff is notified, and it was simply that, based on the light smoke showing, I don't think any of us on the command side really thought that it was going to evolve to be anything. You know, with the wildland influence in our area, a lot of times, brush fires next to a building or vacant lots, alleyways, dropped utility lines, those are the common causes for smoke next to a building. The companies, when they started trying to attack the fire, they went to the west side of the building, which we identify as Bravo. I went to the Bravo side and found a bunch of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units that were lined up for each occupancy or for each area of the HVAC system in the building. And the smoke was coming from what appeared to be the basement in this building, and they thought that it was going to be accessible from the exterior. The other arriving companies went immediately to enter the building. The building was unlocked. It was being used. There were people in the building that were notified by the fire alarm system to evacuate, and they did. And they confirmed to the initial BC that everybody had evacuated and they were accounted for within their unit, which was up on the second floor, a dentist office that actually was the person that made connection with the IC. So they really had what we thought was a low-risk incident. No human life was threatened. It was just a fire that was probably in between the HVAC unit and the basement. So additional resources were asked. They asked for another ladder and primarily some support companies, just because it was so hot outside, and we try to do make a concerted effort when it is as hot as it was, and in the heat of the day when the RHs are low, to make sure that we have enough support for firefighter rehab. So those type of resources were ordered really early. As the companies began removing, they tagged out the electricity and they started removing exterior boards trying to access that fire. They realized that the more water that they were flowing into the spaces in the basement, they weren't really achieving any knockdown. The second arriving battalion chief took a couple companies with him and went to the basement and located the interior stairs to the basement and made entry to the basement, expecting to find a heavily involved basement fire, primarily because of the information that we were getting from the exterior crews that kept saying that, we're flowing 150 gallons a minute on this fire, and we're not really seeing any result. When he got down there with his crews, they stretched leads down to the basement. They had thermal imaging. They had what they felt to be really good situational awareness of the exits and the floor plan. And the conditions. The conditions were warm, not hot, clear atmosphere, little to no smoke, and it was cut up in the basement. So somewhat of a complex search, but not anything insurmountable that we don't run across on a day-to-day basis. So the BC was having companies charge their lines, make themselves ready, and search, do a primary, secondary for human life, and then also start opening up walls to try to access the fire, which at that time he thought was probably above them in the trusses. So they were cutting holes in the ceiling, cutting holes in the wall, and time was ticking. And when the additional resource for firefighter safety were added, I decided to self-initiate on it and started to head up that way, as well as a couple of our other command staff, medical service officers, ambulance, things like that. When I arrived, I sat with a IC that was on the A side, the address side of the building, and decided that the conditions were continuing to worsen. He had put the exterior company, he had asked the exterior company or directed them to make vertical cuts from the windows on the first floor all the way down to the ground, essentially to those trusses, to make better access to gain entry to the fire. But what he was receiving from the basement, from the chief in the basement, was, everything that we have here is clear. We have no heat, we have no fire, clear atmosphere. We're still searching and still trying to locate the seat of the fire. It's really confusing information for us back at the command post because it made no sense. We had a lot of fire showing from the Bravo side, heavy smoke under pressure, and yet our people in that area were reporting that they had nothing. So at that point, the IC asked me to go to the first floor. I took a couple companies with him, became the first floor division, and realized really quickly that, like many of the office buildings, the way that they're laid out, they're very siloed. There was one main hallway, but lots of doors to force. I had light smoke on the first floor. I went in on air with the tracking board and had the companies go in and just do a primary and secondary search because a lot of the doors were closed. We weren't confirmed that everybody was out on the first floor. We only had information on the second floor dentist office. So our primary function was to complete a search, feel the floor, see if we can check for extension as we were making our way after that secondary search. It wasn't too long into that process where the conditions really started to change. And I was talking on a simplex channel between myself and the basement division, the chief that was in the basement, and just telling him, my situation's changing on the first floor. We've got light smoke. We've got light smoke banking on the ceiling. We've got light smoke coming down to about my waist, and my crews were all on their knees, and they were we had laid a pre-connect down the master hallway in case we needed it. Otherwise, the companies were using ropes and just doing wide area searches when they needed to, and then just the regular bread and butter type of searches in the offices that were somewhat segmented and tiny, and making sure that the closets and everything were forced and opened. So if the listeners are following on slides, we're looking at slide 12, titled Northwest Corner, and that is a pretty good visualization of the situation that we had. Light smoke, but it was starting to bank down, and it just continued to get worse until the visibility essentially went from poor to non-existent. And I dropped to my knees.
How fast did that happen, Brian?
Just honestly within a breath or two.
Okay.
Just within breathing in on your SCBA, just one or two breaths, you blink, and the next thing you know, you're standing in darkness. And dropped to my knees, kind of got a hold onto the hose line, made sure I knew where our folks were that were working on the first floor, and I called down to the basement division and said, "Hey, conditions are changing up here. What is it doing down there?" And the same information for feedback was, "It's cold and no smoke." So I just, something's not right here. And at the same time, we have the IC outside, as well as several of the other exterior companies that were reporting a really dramatic change in fire conditions. That would really be probably best viewed if somebody had opened up the slide presentation, probably on slide 26 or so. And what essentially was happening on the outside of the fire is, I guess big picture is the basement, we found out later, was extremely compartmented, and the fire had started behind the HVAC system on the exterior, and it worked horizontally across that entire floor. And eventually it found a way up through the walls and jumped my floor from the basement up to the second floor. And when it did get oxygen, we had a pretty significant event with a flash that occurred right above us. But it was hard to tell inside what was going on, or a rollover, above us. And it was really hard to find out or to feel what was going on because we were in complete darkness. And at that point, all that I really was concerned with was what's going on in the basement. I was able to get my crews out. They were just within a reach of me when all this really did happen. And the interesting thing that I wasn't aware of is I also had a ladder crew that was not on my board that I did not know that was on the first floor that came to me and said, "They told us to get out. They told us to get out." And I transmitted that information to the IC and said, "Hey, I just got passed by a ladder company that said that they were ordered out. Are you aware of that change?" And in not so many words, he said, "No, hold the line until we can get the basement division out." And we decided we just kind of got our bearings about us, and then worked with another couple companies that were staged outside of my division, put them into place, sent them down to the basement, and we're finally able to make face-to-face connection with the battalion chief that was in the basement and get him out of there in pretty quick order. But it was a pretty emotional event, I think, from my standpoint. It was a really close call, and the detail here is a communication between myself and the division below me, because he was still in disbelief. Some of his company had went out for air. He had sent out a different exit that none of us were really familiar with, and he couldn't get them on the radio. So all of his communications were to what he perceived to be kind of the missing elements of his division, and I was trying to contact him and trying to get him out of there, to the point that essentially I sent two companies down the stairs, which standing at the top of, or not standing, but I was on my hands and knees, and at times I was on my belly, waiting for those guys to come up. But it was just like a blast furnace from the basement. the crews on their tick cameras when they were coming out, it was completely whited out. It was just all heat in the basement, but the fire had never actually broke out of that green rock that was all sheetrocked in down in the basement. It was really heavy.
Let me stop you for a second.
Sure.
So you had those rapid changing conditions on the first floor. Heavy, thick, black, angry smoke got down, pushed you guys down to the floor, and out the front door you came. But I thought I heard you say you called the basement, and it said it was still clear and cold.
Yeah.
So when did it turn black and smoky on them?
When it finally banked down to where I was on my belly, and I sent crews down to get him, that's when they came back up with their tick and said, it was so hot down there. But I think one of the keys to this is when you're in that environment for so long and you're not actually working, and you become normalized to your environment and you don't see subtle changes as significant changes. I don't think the division below me knew the conditions or appreciated the conditions until it got to the top of the stairs. When it got to the top of the stairs, he realized, wow, something radically changed. He was in complete darkness in that basement and was focused on just finding fire and didn't recognize or appreciate the amount of fire that you could see on that slide 26 that was occurring above him. And even in the slide, if the viewers open up the attachment, you can see that there's still not a lot of smoke in that basement. It is directly on that first floor and that second floor, and probably the weirdest fire conditions or fire dynamics that I think I've ever seen in a Type 5 office building. Not that we get a lot of them. I mean, normally these type of fires would be in an attic fire, at least in my experience in the urban world, but not at all what I expected this fire to go. And it eventually became a parking lot. We lost this entire building from what was a stupid HVAC, small HVAC fire that extended into the joist and into the basement and subsequently became a parking lot. It's one of the, it's an embarrassing case in my mind for me, but it's also goes right next to my pile of close calls that, never really to expect the unexpected, because it did happen to us that day.
It looks like, I scrolled on up to slide 35. The fire broke through on the first floor. You had it coming out the windows. I'm assuming the fire broke the windows and not the firefighters. Is that accurate?
Right. That's
okay.
Accurate.
And then, bam, it's coming out the roof.
Yeah, it went just like a chimney, all the way, jumped the floors all the way up to the roof, just like that.
Was it open inside?
No, it was completely finished. And, without, like I said, it turned out to be a parking lot, so it didn't have a whole lot of forensics left. We don't know if there was a chase that it traveled, which I'm assuming there was some type of electrical chase that probably didn't have fire stops or wasn't constructed the correct way to code, or there was an anomaly with the construction style that allowed the fire to travel up that far. If it doesn't do anything to your viewers or your listeners and your viewers, to take another look at their districts and some of these Type 5 lightweight truss buildings that aren't protected, and you really have to do you really have to second guess yourself a little bit when you're trying to make the decision whether to risk going interior on a multiple story building like this with, I say, only 23 people. That's probably still more than a lot of departments have available to them, but I'm not sure I would have made that same decision that day if I would have known the fire was going to travel as quick as it did vertically.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask you. How long did it take from when the conditions went to where it was black on you, till it broke out the front windows, till it went through the roof. What's the timeline for this?
Well, and probably the time that we've been talking is as fast as it happened, to the point where you get to where you get the abandoned tone. I mean, we don't use the abandoned tone very often, and I almost feel like it's a failure when we do. We try to avoid, make purposeful decisions, not to get to a point where our tactics have failed and we have to have a retreat. And this went from smoke at my shoulders, a couple blinks down to the floor. The heat followed right after that, and then it was maybe a few minutes of competing for airtime to get on the radio and get a hold of the division below me, and then transmit what I was seeing inside, which wasn't, just quite frankly, it wasn't very sexy compared to what it looked like outside. So there were a lot of companies on the outside, the ladder companies, the division that was on the outside saying, hey, I see changing conditions, constantly. We've got fire here, we've got fire there, we've got fire here. And when you're inside like that, you're just constantly getting bonked trying to get a message out that that really, was, in my mind, a little bit more important, trying to get our division out of there in the basement. I mean, there was a point. I mean, I could see when I stayed until the last person went past me, and the person that I followed was the division from the battalion chief from the basement, and we, I didn't know it was him until I came mast to mast with him. Couldn't even tell on his helmet that it was a white helmet. I mean, it was just his eyes when we met up, and I followed him all the way out, and both of us were just thankful that we made it out, but at the same time, we're just completely surprised and really worried to make sure that everybody was accounted for. That accountability process that occurred after we did get out took several minutes to get through for the IC, just because we had a balance of a second alarm with all the personnel and all the support staff, and the PARs really can eat up a lot of airtime and take a lot of time. But I kind of appreciated hearing, that Ladder 2, Team A is out, Team B is out. I mean, all the crews that I'm usually on the other end of the radio, but in this case, I had the opportunity to take a division, and I took it, and you learn to really appreciate hearing all those crews and that you were responsible for, to make sure that everybody's out there with you.
Mm-hmm. Were there any victims inside?
Not one, nope. And it was July 5th. I think there could have been an assumption on my part that the building was completely vacant and the dentist office was the only thing that was open, but so often we go to alarm systems and we go to actual fires in apartment buildings where we'll be in overhaul, and we will miss a floor, or we won't do a floor, and there'll still be people inside. So the way that this scene was evolving with the light smoke, I just directed all the crews that I had on the first to open up everything, just to be absolutely sure that we're not missing something. And on a second, as a second priority was to check for any extension and where that smoke was coming from. So kind of dual purpose with the 2 or 3 companies that we had with me on the first floor, and then I had the bigger issue of getting somebody up on the second as well, which I never did make. Mm-hmm. I had a deputy chief that came in that met me on the backside that was going to take the second division on the second floor and check for extension, but we didn't get any time. By the time that he got around to me, the fire had already jumped to the second floor.
Now, when things went bad, how many firefighters were on the first floor and how many firefighters were in the basement?
I think at probably 6, if not 8, in the basement, and I had 7, including me, that were on the first floor. And then the unknown ladder crew that I didn't know was actually on the first floor, they were on there too with 4 people. what they had done, it turned out in the AAR after everything was over, was that they had made those cuts from window to ground and went into that first floor just to do a curve cut or two on the floor to see if they could find where that fire was. So they were doing truck work. They were actually assigned to an exterior division. They weren't assigned to me. But when they went to, when the conditions changed and they went to move, their first action was to go down that main hallway, which is where I encountered them face to face, and then we kind of changed our focus from firefighting to locating all of our people.
Mm-hmm. All right. For the benefit of the listener, what are your 3 to 5 lessons learned? Now you get to become the teacher and help others learn from this close call something that they might do differently as a result of what you would share with them.
Well, this is always a struggle. I mean, there is a constant debate in the fire service right now about divisions. Are they on air? Are they not on air? Are they strategic? Are they tactical? Are they task? We know they're not task. That's a given. But at what point do you lose the ability to really be effective as a div soup on a structure fire if you are not in the area that you're assigned? And so we've, as an organization, we've gone back and forth on that. If we have a house fire, most often the divisions stay outside and manage the front door. On larger fires, we'll send them into lobbies and we'll send them into stairwells. Keep them at an access point, and that's what I was trying to do in this case. But hindsight being 2020, is that what it is, Rich? I can't remember. You can cut that out. Hindsight being what it is. I was a part of the scene as it was evolving, and instead of being at that front door and communicating with my crews that were on the first floor and learning about the conditions from them, I was being a part of it. I was feeling it. And I felt that I had a good span of control. I felt I had good communication because the radio was useless. There was, aside from us going to a different tactical group or doing something that wasn't authorized by the IC to be able to communicate with those folks, I had to use face-to-face communication and yell into the door and yell to them. So I adapted.
Hold on.
Oh, sure.
You said the radio was useless. Why?
And primarily the reason why in our system is that on a first alarm fire, all the radio traffic remains on one channel, one talk group, one channel. The IC has the ability to split things up. Once he or she establishes command and assigns different, allocates different tools the radio gives us. But at the time that, and throughout this whole incident, there was only one channel. So when it went to a second, you had 5 companies on the radio going en route, getting short reports of what the incident and staging and all of the ancillary traffic. Plus, you had 2 other divisions that were communicating. Plus, you had dispatch communicating. It was too much. You couldn't get any airspace whatsoever to be able to communicate back and forth with the resources that you were assigned. So you have to adapt. And we did that, but at the same time, that was our biggest detriment. And I don't think I'd ever been involved in an AAR after an incident and not had communication come up as a problem or a challenge or a detriment.
Are you changing anything as a result of this?
Well, a couple things that we're doing differently, and we purchased an entire new radio system, and it's in place now, but we're not using it yet until we take this incident and recreate it and run through it and add a little bit more complexity to it with the different talk groups. We have been on a legacy VHF system for 50 years, and it has its place, and its place expired about 1970. So the new system is an 800 trunk system. That's also got a legacy aspect to it that we can revert back to if we need to, where we bring in some of our federal partners. But we were able to develop a digital trunk system that gives us the flexibility to expand incidents like this quickly on the fly, and activate some of the new functions that the communication systems offer, like alerting everybody on the fire scene with tones, and taking advantage of some of in this case it's a Motorola system, but with some of the vendor add-ons that we purchased and were able to put into play. So in this case, if this fire happens after January, I would hope to see a much different communication plan, much better plan that would be able to make everybody successful and be able to communicate just by expanding within the plan that we establish with the different talk groups that automatically roll over. But we didn't have that this day. We had one channel and a simplex channel at that, so there wasn't a whole lot of flexibility that the incident commander had.
Was radio discipline a problem at all?
Again, that's another issue that we struggle with, because emotions kind of get in the way. I think everybody that was reporting information on the fire scene thought that their information was warranted and justified and important. Because like I said, there were three completely different pictures that were being painted simultaneously. The exterior division saw heavy fire showing from the first and the second floor. Myself, I was essentially licking the carpet on the first floor, and I was definitely having an emotional event. And then the basement was having nothing. And all of us thought that our information was equally important. The radio discipline issue that really concerns me, and that we picked up as a result of this, is getting that responding traffic off of the same channel. And what we do now is anytime somebody's on air, there is a sterile environment from our dispatch. They're not on the radio talking, giving updates. We adopted a very similar process to what the rest of the agencies that we serve with our communication centers adopt, where you start on a primary channel and then you flip over to a tactical channel when you arrive. Still limited because you only have one simplex channel, but at the same time the responding companies are on a different channel, so you don't have that constant overwhelming radio traffic from dispatch. The other thing that we did was we changed our timers from 20-minute timers to 10-minute timers from dispatch, and added a clock that is heads up on our mobile data computers in all the apparatus and command cars and everybody's car essentially now, that is large and it's in your face. So when you pass the 10-minute mark, you get a heads up from your MDC, as well as you get that audio heads up from dispatch that 10 minutes had elapsed. Everybody that I've talked to in this incident has the same emotional feeling that I did, was that time flew by. I mean, we were 30 minutes into this thing, and the building was almost completely burned down, and there was really a vacuum in time. There was really a vacuum in terms of how fast the time went for each individual person that was there. And if you talk to the dispatchers, or we call them communication specialists, if you talk to them, they felt like time dragged on forever. They were waiting for more updates, and that was an emotional event for them that people don't often think about. When you have to throw an abandon tone and you hear people in trouble, that definitely changes the dynamics in the communication center as well.
Yeah, it's funny how dispatch and the scene were suffering from sort of opposite distortions of time. At the scene, the time was flying by, and for dispatch, time was crawling by.
And you know what? I think if we went back retro and talked to a lot of our comm specs across the country that do this for a living, you'd probably hear, I would guess, you'd probably hear the same thing. And if they have a fire background, you could probably ask them, and you'd find out that that's exactly what they're thinking. What are those guys doing? What's taking so long? We give our comm specs so many tools so they can see how fast we're driving, they can see where we're parked. Now, with the RASU technology, they can even see in our system now with our new 800 system, they can see where our portables are. So if we go mobile and we start walking into the building, they can see, hey, there goes, Firefighter Smith, and he's entering on the Bravo side. They can see all that, so they're invested. They're completely invested, and we don't think about that organizationally, or at least we never used to think about that. We definitely are now. We brought on a psychologist actually in our organization to be a part of our command staff and to start looking at the research that's out there and apply some of the lessons, kind of like what you're doing. In fact, she has some of your books and try to institutionalize a lot of the field of psychology that's happening into our organization in the areas where we think it could be most beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cutting edge.
Well, you know what? She asked. And she actually rides with our crews now on certain days of the week, and it can be anywhere from or any situation from somebody that's going through a divorce. Obviously everybody and their mother has an EAP program of some sort, whether through their insurance or through their employer. But how often do they actually get anything out of it? Anecdotally, what I found here is that our personnel, if they get to the point of using AP, will use it and then it'll get thrown away, or they'll go for 1 or 2 times and then they'll never go back. Their insurance will run out, or it's very impersonal. Well, it changes. The dynamic changes when you have somebody that's part of your organization that knows you, that understands the environment that you're working in, that understands the politics, that understands what it's like to work shift work, that is current on all the research and all the psychology that affects you. And what she does is she not only connects with the firefighter, the families, but also helps him through for some time. You're not limited to 4 visits like you would in a traditional program through EAP. You can use the EAP, but we always have our psychologists follow up. If this would have been a firefighter fatality, if I would have gotten killed, or if Steve would have gotten killed, or any of our crew members, or anything untoward would have happened on that incident, she would have been there doing crisis intervention as well as following up for the next several years with the people that were impacted, plus working with the people on the other end of the radio and realizing that impact on them and their families. And it really takes on a different flavor when you have one of your own that's involved in the organization and the mental wellness of the organization.
Absolutely.
And then you get to capitalize on the benefits of like situational awareness or emotional intelligence or leadership and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have those philosophies thanks to her built into the organization, and we're in the process of instituting those and institutionalizing those throughout from the point where you're hired and you're brought in all the way until you retire. And then it would be my goal to actually have that post-retirement, because that's another huge life change that I don't think anybody really tells you about until you go through it. I'm looking forward to it, but I can't. I've seen the last 3 or 4 people that have been at the battalion chief level. They've had a tough time adapting to life outside of the fire department, and
Wow. You're going to find this incredible. I just recorded an episode on that very topic of preparing for the climb down the ladder, preparing for retirement. In fact, I think it just went live yesterday on
really?
Yeah, on the show.
Well, here's the thing that scares me, Rich, is that out of the last couple people that have retired, I can name all of them have had cancer after they've retired. So I have a hard time believing that their cancer wasn't related to a stress trigger. I just have a really hard time believing that their medical conditions aren't tied to that lifestyle change or that significant event of leaving the organization. And it's not one, and it's not two, but I'm talking like almost 10.
Wow.
So I really think that there's something there, and so I want to do something for those people so that we don't send them out into an area that they're not prepared for. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah.
I think
well, for the listeners, go back and listen to episode 27. As I'm talking with Jeff Dill from the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance and a recently retired fire chief from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and myself, and who retired, and we're talking about that very thing, Brian. It's finding your passion and purpose after retirement, and finding a way to bring yourself continue your sense of worth and well-being, so that you can remain physically and mentally healthy after you retire.
Yeah, that's the best part. I mean, that's the fun part when you actually get to retire. Who wants to retire and get sick?
Yeah.
It's certainly not me.
Yeah, me neither. Well, Brian, thank you for spending some time with me to talk about this incident and the close call that you guys had and the lessons that you learned from it. I captured about a half a dozen lessons that I'll share in the show notes. Plus, you heard Brian talk about on slide this and slide that. We have a slideshow of the incident that'll show progression from first arriving all the way through to the rubble, unfortunately, that's left as this building was completely consumed by the fire. And you'll get an idea of the speed and the energy that is passing through this building in a short amount of time, and how this fire is growing, and how close they came to getting overrun by this fire unexpectedly. And in addition to the slideshow, there is also going to be in the show notes a helmet cam video of, was it the first arriving company, Brian?
It was one of the first alarm companies. Okay. I believe Ladder 2.
Okay. And there's no audio in the helmet cam video, but it'll at least let you see how seemingly minor this fire appeared, as the helmet cam captures just a little bit of a smoke condition. And as you scroll through the slideshow, you'll see how quickly this fire progressed, and how lucky these firefighters are that they were not overrun by these rapidly changing conditions, because it looks like when those windows blew out, there was no stopping it. And we're just thankful that you guys were able to get extricated from that building. So thank you for sharing your time with me. Well, that's it. Episode 29 is complete. Thank you to Spokane Fire Department Assistant Chief Brian Schaeffer for taking some time from your busy schedule to talk with us today. And thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to be interviewed on the show, visit samatters.com and click on the Contact Us link. And thank you in advance for sharing your lessons so others may live. If you like the show, please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and search for SA Matters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback. If you like the show, I'd really appreciate you giving it a 5-star review as well. Not only will this motivate me to work harder for you, but it'll help others find the show as well. If you've been inspired and want to learn more about situational awareness, consider becoming a member of the SA Matters community. It's free, and when you sign up, you'll receive a free special report that I've created just for the new members titled 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. To claim your free gift, head over to samatters.com and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says Sign Up for the Membership. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.